All right, let me get the right slide here.
So we started recording. This is Ithaca College presenting their digital transformation from cave to the cloud.
Great, thanks, Dave. Everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. My name is Steve Lane, and I'm here along with Seamus Enright and Lisa Ifinguida to talk about Ithaca College's journey with security and productivity, which we called From the Cave to the Cloud. My title is Cloud Applications Administrator, and I'm responsible for many of the Microsoft 365 productivity services. Seamus Enright is an information security engineer who spends much of his time inside the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center. Lisa Ifinguida is the Business Productivity Application Coordinator who coordinates efforts for business productivity solutions on our campus with a focus on Office 365 applications. Dave Perlman reached out to me asking if we could present today about our journey based on a case study Microsoft did about our use of Microsoft 365 security tools. I know we sent that out earlier today, but if you need a link, I'm assuming Preston can drop that into the chat.
So a little bit about Ithaca College. We are a residential liberal arts college located in New York in the Finger Lakes region. We have 5 schools with over 100 degree programs. There are 6,200 undergrads, 470 graduate students, and around 1,700 faculty and staff. And we are a central IT organization with 56 staff, and we employ around 100 student employees in various areas of IT. So we're talking about our journey from the cave to the cloud, and the cave was a very dark place, everyone. The campus community really needed collaboration solutions and file sharing, but we didn't have a lot to offer. The applications we did have were limited with little support, and we were seeing low use of any solutions we had on campus. And our file server storage was an on-prem solution with limited options. There were limited quotas. It was difficult for customers to access files remotely. Customers couldn't edit files at the same time. They were emailing files back and forth. There were copies of documents everywhere, poor version control, and they also had to go through IT to manage rights to that shared data. And the risk of data loss or corruption was high. If something did happen, customers didn't have the ability themselves to easily restore anything. And as far as resources, we really had a lack of IT resources focused on Office 365 and the cloud for productivity applications as well as security. So our ability to support the campus was limited, as well as our communications to the campus. We were really reactive with our approach in our interactions.
So back in 2017, we were in the process of beginning to rebuild our security infrastructure. Due to the departure of the whole security team previously, there was a lot to do. We lacked a lot in terms of visibility and response capabilities, even for some fairly basic things. Alerts, investigations, and remediations were pretty manual things that potentially involved a lot of different people. Reaching out to the right person for the right system and getting the right information back made investigating and reacting to potential incidents pretty slow and cumbersome. Even with the involvement of many people, many of our systems were missing a lot of granular auditing configurations, which really limited the usefulness of information we were able to get after all that effort. Also, basically everything was using password-based single-factor authentication with the ability to reset the password via email address if it wasn't using our directory services for authentication. And with our email system not being particularly more secure than anything else, and one of our primary ingress points, this gave malicious actors vast potential access to our infrastructure. This made us a very reactive organization to incidents and increased the risk of the institution suffering from financial or reputational damage.
In October of 2017, we upgraded to A5 licensing. Our license renewal ended up happening right when Microsoft was changing the A5 licensing model, so the transition was a little rough. Once that was worked out, then the magic happened. With A5, the Fast Track benefit is included, and they have been amazing. Along with Fast Track, Dave Perlman suggested we join office hours, which has been very, very helpful. I personally have had many aha moments during the Q&A segment. And yeah, just note that Dave and I were wearing the same hat for one of those Q&A segments a couple of months ago. Going into more detail about Fast Track, having regularly scheduled meetings with our Fast Track team helped us keep motivated and accountable. We created a team and added our Fast Track team members to it, which is a great way to collaborate. With all the new tools, Fast Track helped us develop a roadmap for implementation to make sure we were completing tasks in an efficient order and not missing important configuration details. We knew serious use of Teams was in the college's future, so we worked through configuring Office 365 groups to have an expiration policy and follow a naming convention. We spent a lot of time going through the SharePoint and OneDrive sharing and external access settings to help meet the needs of customers who weren't using Office 365 for collaboration. We started an Office 365 Pro Plus implementation project, so I've been working through configuring the Office Readiness Toolkit to start. With security, they helped us implement Azure ATP with conditional access, helped with Defender ATP, AIP, Outlook Safe Links, and Office 365 audit log configuration. After some of the Fast Track help, we were able to put together a process so departments who want to move to Teams will also get at least Windows 10 1709 for files on demand support, Office 365 Pro Plus, and an overview of OneDrive. A side note about Teams adoption, even though we announced Teams to the campus, many customers are requesting new Teams because they saw colleagues using it and not based on our announcement. OneDrive is a bit of a quiet success story. I've been watching stats for OneDrive and was amazed at how many people were actively using it without any recent announcement from us about it. The stats really help justify making OneDrive the choice for file storage, even though there are competing cloud file storage solutions. Nothing comes close to OneDrive based on its integration with Azure Active Directory, self-service file restore, ransomware protection, and increased quota. To help make all this possible, a few of our positions were redefined with a very specific Office 365 productivity focus, and security work has moved from network and firewall-based to endpoint, server, and cloud protection using Microsoft 365 tools. The transition was especially important for the productivity tools because Office, then Microsoft 365, was really the gift that kept on giving with more and more awesome tools at our disposal.
With the assistance of the Fast Track team, we were able to configure and deploy some pretty significant security changes. They provided us a lot of training and instruction on what security tools were available to us and how to use them. And some of the things that we started using we already owned, but we either didn't have expertise in or had not configured them previously. Here's some of the things we've been able to implement so far. We were able to use conditional access to provide significantly more robust security with MFA for the Microsoft 365 suite, which had previously been the primary ingress point of malicious actors using the third-party MFA integration with Duo. We set up detailed audit logs for Office 365, including user, administrator, and delegate actions for mailboxes. And with that, we now have fairly superb auditing granularity for all of Microsoft 365. We got the ability to use Threat Explorer to search email metadata and perform mass removal of email via moving it to junk, soft, or hard delete. And this transformed a lot of the spam we got from us getting a large volume of service desk activity through either calls or emails and putting up mass messaging as a primary defense against this, to often being able to block links and then pulling malicious emails before most people ever see them. We deployed safe links and safe attachments. These give us real-time link scanning and reporting on who clicked what link when. and the ability to blacklist and whitelist links that are accessed from email, no matter where the person is located. We'd previously relied on our firewall and transport rules to do this, and there's significant limitations to both. And then automatic scanning of attachments in a detonation chamber to check for suspicious or malicious activity with safe attachments. We deployed Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, similar to Windows Defender, but a lot better. It gives us things like remote scanning, reporting, investigation, package collection, threat hunting, and detailed machine activity. I don't know if anybody here uses Defender with SCCM, but previous to this we did, and my experience with trying to run definition updates, read reports, or perform a scan was not amazing. Kicking off a scan that happens within plus or minus 2 hours and having scans timing out was not really the most helpful thing. So the scanning as soon as it checks back into ATP was really helpful. And as Windows OS versions advance, we keep getting new, more awesome features added into Defender ATP. We also deployed Azure Advanced Threat Protection. This supersedes Azure Threat Analytics and basically watches Active Directory for signs of unusual user or machine activity. It isn't very noisy and is pretty simple to set up, and it gives you some really valuable piece of information without requiring a whole lot of time or effort input, at least if you have AD servers that can handle the app and do less than 100,000 actions per second. If you don't, you have to set up a secondary server, but it's still not that bad. And then we also got access to Cloud App Security. This is a really awesome central pane for user investigation. It's what we mostly use it for right now. The more services you have authenticating against Azure, the more useful it is. It can give you visibility into shadow IT services such as Dropbox or Google Drive, as long as you're running Windows 1709 or later. And you can build out alerting based on user activity, and it provides a good framework for being able to perform automated responses to suspicious user activity, such as forcing MFA prompts or resetting a password. All of the different ATP services tie in with each other, which really makes all the data that each one has significantly easier to interpret. And that's true overall with the Microsoft 365 suite. Our ability to respond to and mitigate incidents now takes a lot less time as data is integrated together and provides us a more informed understanding of what that data actually means. And this is, of course, one of the key parts with security. Looking at a small portion of suspicious activity is going to typically look weird, but generally be inconclusive. But when you can see the bigger picture and how things are related, you can get a better handle on what's happening.
So speaking of services tied together, let's talk more about Microsoft Teams. Our journey really took off in October 2018 when we enabled licenses for all students, faculty, and staff. And with phase one, we really configured Teams with external access and actively worked with administrative units and departments to adopt Teams like legal affairs, risk management. And as Steve mentioned earlier, many areas are reaching out to us all the time to learn more about Teams and Office 365 and how that environment can really help their day-to-day. So looking to the future with the second phase, we're really looking at Teams for the classroom. And we're working with our teaching and learning with technology department within IT and partnering with faculty to determine how this can complement our LMS and be used in the classroom. This semester, we had a couple faculty piloting Teams with their class or research classes, and we received a lot of great feedback on things that worked really well and areas to look into further. And some of our next steps include proactively reaching out to student organizations, looking at how this could be used with search committees, and ultimately the last phase will be enabling self-creation so that our customers can create Teams on the fly. And with OneDrive, we're currently running a project to configure and deploy OneDrive to all of our managed devices. This would include enabling known folder move, as well as files on demand. And as the second phase of that project, we're looking to migrate home folders off our local file server to OneDrive. And what we don't move into OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, we're looking at moving into Azure. And with moving all of this data, it positions us really well for utilizing Windows Information Protection, Information Rights Management, and Azure Information Protection.
So Azure Information Protection is one of the next security products we're really excited about implementing. It covers a huge umbrella of data management within Microsoft 365 ecosystem. It essentially allows you to manually or automatically identify and tag data that matches certain criteria, such as FERPA, HIPAA, or PCI data that exists within Microsoft 365 and applies certain rules to the data. This allows you to be able to generate reporting on where sensitive information and what type of sensitive information is stored and who has access to it, as well as define what is allowed to be done with it. By applying the correct set of rules, you can do things like make documents view only, make emails unable to be forwarded, or even revoke access to protected documents when employees left the college. And along the same lines, we're really excited about Office message encryption. With a lot of message encryption services, it's significantly complex to deploy and maintain, as well as being incredibly cumbersome to the person actually using it. OME streamlines a lot of this, and it can leverage AIP data tagging and categorization, be set manually by the sender within Office, or be applied via transport rules. And that gives us a whole lot of flexibility with it in terms of how it's deployed and what we can do with it.
So that's our journey so far, and you'll see in the credits that are shortly going to roll that it does take more than the three of us to do this work. Does anybody have any questions, or Preston, if you want to take the next step and facilitate, that'd be great.
I actually, absolutely. So, great job, Ithaca team. Really appreciate, your partnership. I remember about 18 months ago when I think we spent 3 hours with the broader team doing a large whiteboard. And by the time we were done, we had filled up the entire thing, and hopefully some of it was useful. But, what I'd love to hear, so, it's amazing to me what you've accomplished. So what I'd love to hear is, what were some of the pain points? Like, this is great, right? It's a Microsoft commercial. It's awesome. What were some of the challenges? How big is your IT team there? Let's start there.
So we have currently, I think, 56 filled position. I think we have about 60 total position lines for IT.
And how many people in security?
We have 2.
2 people. And Seamus, I know, and one of the other people did a lot of the, you guys did a lot of the heavy lifting, yeah?
Related to the security deployment stuff, yeah. I mean, we obviously kind of work with Steve and some of the other sysadmins to kind of integrate some of the stuff like Azure information, or the Azure ATP.
ATP and conditional access.
Yeah,
right.
So it's definitely more than just me and Jason, but yeah, at least getting it off the ground, it involved a lot of legwork from us.
And so your core team, right? 2 people in security, and how many people kind of on the Office 365 team that were really, focused on this effort over the last 18 months?
Well, it really was on the Office 365 side, not security. I mean, mainly 3. And, that doesn't count our colleague Dale, who's just scrolling past on the screen there, who was kind of handling the, babysitting of the tenant and email and calendar. So he continued doing that while Lisa, Sherman and I really took on trying to expand the service to the college. So,
awesome. So 5 or 6 people have accomplished it. Obviously, executive buy-in from Casey and Jason and your CIO as well. But in terms of what was accomplished with 5 or 6 people over the course of a fairly short time period, congratulations, right? It's a lot of work. And so when you hear us talking about, hey, what can be accomplished with some of the tools that are out there. And I know you have Premier as well, and you probably leverage some of that. And you also have Fast Track enabled. Listen, if you're not, as a Microsoft customer, getting your money's worth out of Fast Track, man, let us know, right? If the engineers aren't the right ones that you need, or we're not getting it done, let us know. So so again, just great job, and really appreciate you willing to share our story. Maybe we can. Is there any other questions from the audience? And again, great job, Ithaca.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, so there is. Yeah, first of all, I just, before I read John's question, you guys did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for coming on and presenting.
Absolutely.
This was wonderful. I truly appreciate it. I do have a question or two, but I'm going to let you guys answer John. So what sort of challenges with PR, marketing, communications to campus community?
In the security side, obviously, we didn't have MFA kind of anywhere before we rolled it to Office 365, which is probably one of the more complex ways to roll out MFA. So I would definitely suggest not doing that if you have an alternative, to maybe roll it out to web applications that all use the same client, i.e. a web browser. So it was specifically with that, it was really pretty complex to communicate out to people a really clear idea of what was going to change and how it was going to change. There were some things that were also changing in types of the capabilities of the services kind of as we were rolling it out. So like one of the big issues we ran into was as we were rolling it out, Macs, the built-in Mac mail client, which a lot of people had been using, didn't support the modern authentication for Office 365. So they had been using IMAP previously, and their whole mail ecosystem would stop working. And there was a lot of people who were pretty heavily invested in that. So like communicating that out, that's probably the largest part that we got a lot of pushback from. Mm-hmm. And it was really key. Like we had buy-in from the president and the board of directors for the security initiatives. And it took a lot of meetings with a lot of people to say, this is what the college is doing. And, we'd be happy to hear feedback on how we can do it better, but we are going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so kind of allowing us to be out of the way as like the people arguing that this is going to happen made us able to do it. I'm not sure if the security group had been pushing it, if we would have actually been able to roll it out beyond IT, really.
Right.
No, that's great.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate what Seamus said, that definitely without us being able to say, look, don't yell at IT. This is from the very highest levels where the college is going, and we will help you, change certain processes and procedures and mail clients, like Seamus said. But it's not, are we going to do this? We are going to do this, and fortunately, and again, Dave, not trying to sound like a Microsoft commercial, but all the things we were moving people to were also very good applications. So it wasn't like, oh, here's a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper to write your emails on. Here's Outlook, and they're like, oh, well, that's not so bad. So, but top down really helped.
And if you have any examples of maybe, and again, anonymize it, however you want, but if you have a couple of slides or one key slide that you presented to your executive leadership team or communication plans, feel free to share them in the channel if it's something you're willing to do, right? Because that's something that there's more trepidation around how are we going to communicate. And obviously larger schools, it can get more complex and there's, politics, but that's definitely a key learning. I think honestly, as I get into some of these more complex organizations, more of the challenge is not around the technical side. It tends to be around the communication and governance. Right. So that's great.
Yeah, I don't think I have any of those slides on me right now, but I can see if I can talk to Jason and take some up and send them over to you, so you can share them maybe in the next meeting or something.
I can answer John Mathis's question from me too about challenges getting funding. And again, this was more on the security side, but it was actually great timing, Dave, the whiteboard, and and Seamus, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of dissatisfied with some security tools we had. So not renewing those licenses helped us with the funding.
Yeah, it was kind of an opportune time. Like we had suddenly had this giant pile of cash that we had been saving for some managed service that we had actually relatively recently gotten fully deployed, but it didn't really give us much visibility or utility, so we decided to stop using it. And at that same time, we were close to renewing our Microsoft agreement. And we'd been looking at, initially it was, I think, Windows Defender ATP we'd been looking at, and thought we could use that money better for that specifically. And then we got into more detailed conversations, and then A5 kind of became a thing, and we got into that.
So it was great timing. And what'd you say, Seamus, a big pile of cash? I need to.
Yeah, basically. Well, it was a big pile of money that was going to be spent for one thing, but could suddenly be spent for something else.
So let's put a little finer point on it even. When I came down there, right, the security organization had some dollars. The infrastructure team was spending money with us. I honestly, in however many years I've been working with Ithaca College, never had everybody in the same room, right? And so can you put a dollar figure on, as you went, humored me, and you were willing to go through that kind of process where we said, okay, let's open the kimono, right? Not to offend anybody, but sometimes, right, we don't always know what's underneath, and it may not always be pretty, but at least let's share that. And we got to that point, and that was like a key turning point, both in the Microsoft relationship in some ways, not that it was bad before, but also in terms of really getting under the covers in the IT organization as a whole. You like the sir? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other questions that was here, guys, was from Marcus that was just asking if you could share a general estimate of the total user count that you guys support through Microsoft 365. And is your tenant sharing externally to other organizations? Or do you block guest access, that type of stuff?
Yeah, so one of our fast track efforts, I'll start from the end of this question, was configuring everything for external access. That was actually quite a project all in itself to make sure we understood it and configured it correctly. And like I mentioned in the presentation, that's how we're working with Fast Track. I created a team in our tenant, and it is externally shared with the folks at Microsoft on the Fast Track team, and that's how we're collaborating. And the total user account or user count. So that was some stuff Lisa had, I think, at the beginning.
Well, I did something today, and with all of our faculty, staff, students, retirees, alumni, departmental accounts, and everyone else, right now we're supporting between 23 and 24,000 mailboxes.
So this is Dale Regal, who handles Exchange Online and tenant housekeeping and babysitting and the PowerShell guy.
Get out early.
Yeah, so we have email for life. So after, I forget what the year was, at least for now, alumni have email if they want it, and that's driving, a lot of those mailboxes.
Yeah, I think we have kind of in any given year, including recent graduates, I think when last time I looked, it was something maybe like 5,000 alumni over kind of a year span that would access out of, I don't remember, 12 or 13,000 accounts, something like that. But yeah, generally a lot less of them than everybody else really active.
Right.
Actually, that's a pretty high percentage. I will tell
Yeah.
you from experience that if you're seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30%, like what you kind of mentioned there, that's really high for alumni. So not bad, guys.
Yeah, so the biggest part of that is, I think, recent graduates, like,
Right.
they keep using their email for, 6, 8 months or whatever until they
Right.
transition off somewhere else.
And we are, sometimes it is a problem because they aren't really on-campus customers anymore. So it's a little harder to deal with, alumni as a user of the service. So.
Excellent. Well, hey guys, it's right at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a conclusion, stop the recording. There may be some folks who have additional questions if you have time to maybe stick around for a little bit and answer those. I just find sometimes folks answer questions once we stop the recording and end the official meeting. So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you guys doing this. This was fantastic. We'll be sure to get this posted this evening so everybody can listen to it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but you guys can answer any of the other questions you'd like.